Okay, so we've set Redux up. We've got this reducer object here. A reducer is basically just a way to modify state. And we need to set a proper value in here because at the moment we've got this error here telling us that it's not a valid reducer, and that's because it's empty. So let's go ahead and put an actual value in here. What we're going to do is create a slice. So a slice is essentially a segment of the state. It can contain a bunch of reducers. So let's go ahead and create a new slice. In the store folder, I'm going to create a history slice.js. Now I'm going to export const history slice equals create slice, which imports from the Redux.js/toolkit. And in the parentheses, we'll put curly braces for an object. And this takes a name. So this is how we reference this this slice. So the name can just be history. We're going to take an initial state. So what's the state of this before we've made any changes? The initial state when it starts. So we'll just have one property for items, which will be an empty array, because that will just be the history. Our history will be empty before we've sent anything. And then finally we'll have a reducers node right here. And this is where we put all of the individual reducers for history. So we'll come back to that in just a second. Let's go and take this history slice now and use it in the store. So inside those curly brackets, I'm going to say history and just set that to history slice. And I can import that from the file we just created. Okay, so I'll give that a save. Or it's going to have a complaint because I haven't saved this file yet. Let me refresh that and see if the error goes away. I can't remember. It might not because that's still empty. Yeah, I think it might not, but that's okay. We'll write this, then we'll take care of it if it's still showing the error. So we'll add a function here, a reducer, which will be add history item, and this will just be a function. And reducer functions can take two parameters. One will be state, which will be the current state before we've made any changes. And then it'll take an action, which can just be any values we pass in. And then this can make any changes to the state. So the only way of making changes to our global state is through reducer functions right here. That's essentially what these functions are for. So at the bottom, we need to actually export this. So we can say export default history slice dot reducer. There's a reducer property on this history slice, the object returned from this create slice function. So we're going to export that. And I just realized we don't actually need to export this at all, this one here. So I'll get rid of that export. We only need the one down here. Get rid of the export. And we're going to export the function as well, though. So export const, and in there, I'm going to export the add history item function. So like that. Equals, and then history slice dot actions. So I'm exporting the add history item property, which is a function, from the actions property, which belongs on this object returned from the create slice function. So now that we've got rid of that export that was here, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to my store, and I need to change the import. We're not going to import the history slice like that because we've exported the default value, export default history slice.reducer. We just need it like that without any curly braces around it. Okay, so I've saved that, and that error's gone away now, which is nice. So we've got a valid reducer there. We've got no errors. Great. So we can call this function, and it will update the history for us. So what I'll do now, though, just so we can test it out, I'll just log hello everyone. Okay, so when we call this, we should just log this, just so we can check it's working. So how do we call this? Well, we're exporting this function down here, but we don't just call it directly on its own like we'd call any other function. The only way you can update state is by dispatching these actions. So you can't just update state directly by calling this function. You have to dispatch the action. So it's real simple, though. I'll go back to the home screen. And what I'm going to do is in the onSubmit, wherever we are, if we scroll up to here, onSubmit, after the set result text, we're going to do it right here. Dispatch action. So how do we dispatch an action? Well, scroll up to the top. What we're going to do is import something called a dispatcher. So const dispatch equals use dispatch. So this is an object which is imported from React Redux, And essentially, use dispatch gives us a function which allows us to dispatch actions. So this right here is a function we can call, and by calling that, we can dispatch actions. So all we need to do is call that function down here and tell it the action we want to dispatch, and then it will allow us to update the state. So we can dispatch the action, and the action we want to dispatch is just add history item. So let's go ahead and call that in there, and I'll import that too, like that. And I won't pass any values into that yet, but that should be it for now. So if we submit some text to be translated, we should see hello everyone logged. Or actually, let's put a real value, hello. I'll press that, and we should see hello everyone. Cool. So it's going to here and it's calling this this reducer. So what do we want to do instead? Instead of logging, what do we want to do? Well, we want to pass in the result of the translation. So we can take this result and we can pass it in here by putting an object inside the parentheses to this function. And we're going to say item and then set this to just result. Result is that whole text you saw with all the properties. I'm going to save that. Oh, and also because we're using this dispatch variable now inside this function, I'm going to add the dispatch variable as a dependency to this this use callback. So just added dispatch down there as well. We're now passing in this object here with the item property. So in history slice, instead of logging that, we can access that. So I could now just log, where is it? Action.payload.items. So that should now log that. If I press this, okay, it's logged undefined. Why is that? Oh, it's not items, it's item, isn't it? Just item on its own. So let me try that again. I'll press that now. And you can see that it's logged the whole item. So we've passed that object in, and it's logged that out for us. So that's the object that's been passed in. So we can just essentially add that to the state. So it's real simple. I can actually clean this up a little bit. I can say const item equals action.payload, like that. So I've got the item, and underneath there, I'll just check that the item actually has a value because we could, I don't know, forget to pass it in or something like that. And if it's empty, we don't want to add it to the history. And if it's not empty, we'll just say state.items, which you can see is up here. So this items property on the state dot push, which will essentially push an item onto the array and just stick item there. And then what I'll do, just so you can see, I'm going to log the state variable. No, actually, I'll log state.items like that. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to clear the console. I'm going to translate this, and you can see I've got one thing there now. It's logged state.items, which consists of one translation. Let me change this to a different thing. What time is it? And I'll translate it again. And now we should see two things there. So okay, I should have cleared the console. It looks like there's three things. But ignore that first one. You see where the array stops. I should have cleared the console. But yeah, we've got two items there now. So we can see the first translation is still there, and then the second one. I'll clear the console now, and I'll do another thing. I like pizza. And I'll press it, and see what we get. We should have three items now. So we can see the state has kept hold of the previous translations. So now we can just go ahead and output those. It's worth noting though that when you refresh the app, the state is cleared. So when I submit something now, you'll see that's the only item in the state. That we no longer have the others. So in order to persist state between app loads, you need to store it in some other, like, more permanent form of storage. We'll do that later, but for now, this will work until we reload the app just fine.